Opposition's take. Melissa Lantsman is the Conservatives' deputy leader, and she's with us live. Hi, Ms. Lantsman. Good to see you again. Thank you so much for making the time.
Good to see you, too.
The leader of your party, Mr. Poilievre, today called the announcement from the Prime Minister, quote, pathetic. Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith said leaders in Ottawa, quote, finally get it. What do you know that she doesn't?
Well, look, I think we've been saying this out loud, and today what we got was we got a list of projects. We got a list of promises, a list of perhaps things that maybe one day will come to fruition, that list will go to an office that's not yet set up, that doesn't yet have a clear mandate, and Canadians are no better off today. We have 6 months of this Prime Minister who made this a central campaign issue about building the economy, resource development, and standing on our own 2 feet in the face of threats from the U.S. and certainly the trade war that we find ourselves in. And still, we have nothing, no shovels in the ground, no nothing. So I think it's pathetic because it's a list, and that's all it is.
But what's the alternative? I mean, a list is a sort of formalized way of saying, here are the projects we've identified that can move forward the fastest, and we're going to put the weight of the federal government behind them. Like, what inherently is wrong with it, and why do you think it's pathetic, but Danielle Smith thinks it's on the right track?
Well, here's the thing. It's just a list going to an office to one day maybe get approval from this. And frankly, I think that many of those things on the list are already in development, and running a victory lap on theoretical projects is not progress. And I just don't think you can pat yourself on the back today for coming up with a list that goes to an office that's not yet set up yet for one day maybe getting approval. So we're going to stand up to the government, as we have on the issues that we actually think are the problem here. And we've talked about this before, Vashi. It is things like the anti-energy law, Bill C-69. It is the shipping ban off of the West Coast. It is the industrial carbon tax. It is all the things that industry say are in the way that is driving investment out of this country, or at least not attracting it, and driving those dollars to the U.S. As we continue to sell them resources at a discount because we can't even get that part on the list.
And I have a number of questions for you, as I did for Mr. Hogan on those policies. I just want to follow up on the sort of the way in which you're presenting the existence of the list, and make sure that the context that I'm conveying to Canadians and respectfully challenging you with is accurate. It's not that these 5 things need to be approved. Many of them in these instances have been from a regulatory perspective. The issue has been the proponents actually making a decision. And let's take LNG Phase 2, LNG Canada Phase 2, the proponents making a decision to go forward. The signal today that is sent to that proponent is the government will do what it has to do to get that done. Why is that so inherently wrong? If you were in government, you would have to send the same signal too.
Well, the government hasn't said what it's going to do to make these things. They've made grandiose statements on, we are going to do this at a breakneck speed, or I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember, but at a speed at which nobody has seen before. And yet we're 6 months in after an election that was presented to Canadians as a crisis for our economy, a crisis for our resource development. And this is where we're at. So we've got no shovels in the ground. We've got no investment attracted. And that's exactly what our job is. Our job is to point that out and actually present Canadians with something that is going to remove the barrier that industry has said is a barrier to getting these things done. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're certainly going to oppose what needs to be opposed, and then we're going to present solutions. And that's by way of the Sovereignty Act, which you heard from us quite a bit this summer, which includes getting rid of the red tape and the regulations in the way, which, again, we have talked about many times on this show.
Again, though, even if you were in government, you would have to, like, those companies still have to make the decision to proceed with that investment. I understand your point that those policies and as I put to Mr. Hogan, the energy industry itself has identified them as standing in the way. But that is what Bill C-5 is supposed to address. A bill I should mention that your party supported in the last parliamentary sitting. The idea is that if, let's say, LNG Canada Phase 2 needs it to be that the emissions cap is broken, C5 allows the government to override that and do exactly that, what will facilitate the company's investment. You keep citing, I remember in previous interviews, Germany, for example, how fast, just 1 second, let me finish. Germany building the LNG terminal as fast as it did. That is the exact law they use, the exact law that they used to be able to build that terminal. So why is it okay for them, an example you cite as a positive thing, and not for Canada?
So first of all, these things were profitable before these laws came. So the notion that the notion that there is no proponents or anything like that is can be put to bed. The very thing that you're saying is that the government needs to get rid of these regulations in order for these projects to go forward. They've admitted that. The energy minister from earlier this summer said that he can move some of those regulations out of the way in order to get projects done. And then we hear a minister who's non-committal to getting rid of, let's say, Bill C-69, and others in the cabinet that were there for 10 years saying that they will get rid of C-69. If you need to get these things out of the way in order for the project to go forward, and if you can't say that on national TV to you, then I think we have a problem. And there's a solution to that problem. And the solution is get rid of all of it. Get government out of the way so that these projects can proceed quickly, and not for us to have 6 months into the prime minister's, after a big crisis election, have him present a list to an office that doesn't have a mandate, that isn't fully staffed yet, and frankly is another layer of bureaucracy to pick and choose winners and losers.
I do understand the point you're making about a lack of specificity where the answers to those questions are concerned, because I'm certainly asking those questions. But what I do garner from what they are saying is that C5 will act in that way. And you're right to point out that it is a concession or an admission that basically, in order to build those things, that policy can't apply in that instance. But those policies also, in the aggregate, make up a climate policy that will be central to any negotiations, for example, in the future with Europe or other countries that are seized with mitigating the impacts of emissions. And if we abandon them completely, that could hinder our opportunities to diversify our exports in the long term. Like, why is a middle ground so inherently bad?
Well, I just don't think a middle ground is realistic, and I don't think industry thinks that a middle ground is realistic, and I don't think that attracting investment on this middle ground is realistic. In order for us to attract the investment necessary, to attract the proponents necessary to build these projects, you have to give them a very, very clear signal. A signal that you can build here, that we're open for business. Well, your C5 is an admission that you may or may not approve a project at a certain point. Do you really think that an industry would look at C5 as the end-all be-all of, yes, we are going to dump money in Canada because it's a sure bet? I'm not sure about that, and I don't think many others are sure about that. And that is exactly what we're talking about. If the thing that is in the way is actually in the way, you've admitted it in the way, you've presented new legislation in the House saying that it's in the way, then get out of the way and drop those things in order for us to actually have the development, for us to stand on our own 2 feet, for us to be resilient, and for us to be less dependent on a single customer in the U.S.
Are you willing to alter your position if, for example, LNG Canada does decide to go forward with phase 2, if there does appear to be a pipeline proponent that comes forward with this regulatory structure that is in place, not with the rescinding of all of those climate policies? Like, are you willing to admit, if that is the case, that what you're...
No, you're speaking in hypotheticals. Like, the pipeline didn't even make, the pipeline didn't even make a list. There isn't even a thought of a list.
There is no pipeline.
Correct.
There is no proponent for a pipeline. Yeah.
Well, there is no proponent for a pipeline because, frankly, because there are things in the way for that pipeline. But there is not even a thought of putting a pipeline on a list, and that's precisely because he has the exact same people around him who are anti-pipeline. It is akin to being a vegetarian in a steakhouse. You know that he's there, but he's never going to order anything, and everybody knows that.
Respectfully, one person who said something completely different today is probably the biggest proponent in the country of building pipelines, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. She asked Albertans for patience. She feels that there will be a pipeline on the second or third tranche of these ideas. Again, like, why is that okay, good enough for her? You can't criticize her level of defense of the energy industry. There is probably no more ardent defender of it. Why is it okay for her and not for you?
Well, look, we have a job to do, and we've presented the solution to what I think is the course forward. Danielle Smith has agreed with that on many fronts, on the emissions cap, on C-69, on the tanker ban, on the industrial carbon tax. She's been a steadfast that, and we believe that that's the way forward. That's our job in Parliament as the session comes back on Monday, and she has her own job to do.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. Look forward to seeing you back in Parliament, Ms. Landsman. Appreciate you making